What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So I've seen some of you in the comments mention you've seen just too many Switch 2 videos come out. So I thought we would change things up because fortunately a report came through about the Switch 2 revision, and I gotta give the people what they want, so we'll go over that here today. Also, we are gonna be talking about the $80 game, which has been very controversial online to say the least, and now a certain CEO decided to chime in when they absolutely should not have. And then we also have to talk about Doom of the Dark Ages, as people have been concerned around some of its performance since launch in terms of sales. Well, it turns out they had their own numbers to report, and something tells me it certainly aligns with Microsoft's strategy here going forward. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Microsoft, their Xbox, and the potential for Steam being loaded onto their next generation consoles. Their next generation Xbox, that's probably a console, as well as a handheld. That's still sort of up in the air. However, Windows Central did follow up after that initial report that stated they were even to the point of maybe testing some of the Steam integration. This we could see over on Windows Central from Jez Corden. Says a few years ago now, Xbox lead Phil Spencer teased that he'd like to see Epic Game Store and other PC storefronts live on Xbox consoles. Since then, waves of speculation have poured in about exactly how that might look. For my part, I can say that Xbox has been in talks with PC storefront owners, including Steam's Valve, about what exactly that might look like. There have been other rumors that full integration is even in testing, although I take that with a pinch of salt for now. And again, the negotiation thing, I think a lot of us are trying to wrap our heads around how exactly this would work at all, because the idea of the console is that it is a closed ecosystem, and you do get significant, we'll even say portions of third-party software that sells through the storefront that console's locked down to. So opening it up to Steam and then Epic Game Store and others, maybe GOG or something, it kind of is counterintuitive to the point of selling a console in the first place. So that's, I think, the sticking point for a lot of people with this news going around, but I guess we'll see as we head towards Microsoft's eventual announcement, since 2027 appears to be the year they're lining up for it. Also, it looks like Stellar Blade is indeed getting a sequel. Genki posted this screenshot here next to the Stellar Blade key art, with Shift Up talking about the potential for a sequel before 2027. So they have like Stellar Blade, then Project Witches that would come after that. And I guess it's not too surprising to see them be able to turn around for a sequel pretty quickly, since they'd be most likely reusing a lot of the assets and things they made for Stellar Blade. And they did talk about the idea of Stellar Blade becoming like a larger IP overall with consecutive releases. So this seems to fall in line with their plan and their strategy with building up an IP like that. And in general, for Shift Up, it was a big release and showed what they can do here in the larger, we'll say, AAA gaming space. So be curious to see what a sequel would look like here and what ideas they would decide to build on and what new ones they would introduce, apparently ahead of 2027. Oh, and we had talked previously about the idea of Hotel Dusk making some sort of return after the Arc System Works leak that got out there, and it seemed like they were preparing a game for later on this year, and some were tying at the potential of Hotel Dusk after, of course, them doing another Code Recollection. Well, we can see this is posted up over on VGC, who says a new trademark was filed on May 9th for Hotel Dusk Room 215. It was filed on May 9th and published on May 19th in Japan. And again, while we've talked about trademark renewals not being a huge deal necessarily, this one is kind of interesting. Okay, because it is like the first time they've technically filed this. This is like a new filing as opposed to a renewal, and especially in Japan, while Nintendo holds the trademark for the game's Japanese name, Wish Room, as well as the Japanese name of the sequel, Last Window, this appears to be the first time its Western name has been trademarked in Japan, almost like they are preparing for something. And I think it, again, lines up with Arc System Works maybe doing Hotel Dusk Room 215, some sort of remaster or something for the Switch, maybe even Switch 1 and Switch 2, so a lot of potential there. But again, for now, it is technically just a trademark. Just don't be surprised if you see it pop up in a random direct coming up. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Switch 2 and the potential for a Switch 2 refresh. I know, I was getting worried too. There's a lot of Switch 2 videos. Now we could talk about the successor, the refresh, the Switch 2 Pro. we'll see there. But this popped up actually the other night, and again, I kind of laughed when I saw it, which you can see this is posted over on Bloomberg from Takashi Machizuki, who does have ties to supply chains and stuff for a lot of electronics and companies, and naturally has focused in on like Sony and Nintendo, which in this case, you can see, says a new supply of components is plenty for Nintendo to ship more than 20 million Switch 2 units by March. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. But then he goes on to mention OLED panels for future Switch 2 refreshes. Okay, so this in his report saying Nintendo has turned to Samsung Electronics to help make the main chips for the Switch 2, a move that may help the Japanese company ramp up production of the gaming console enough to sell a higher than projected 20 million units by March 2026. The decision marks a key win for Samsung, which is trying to compete with Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing in making chips for the world's electronics, people familiar with the matter said. The Korean company has also pushed for OLED panels to be used when Nintendo refreshes the Switch 2 in the future, another person said. So, okay, two things. One, if Nintendo really does manufacture 20 million Switch 2 systems by the end of this fiscal year, that would be massive, because we would assume they'd be able to ship all of those, which means that in its first fiscal year, despite being cut short by about 2 months or so, would still be able to, I guess, like set the record for consoles sold, like especially in a launch year for a system, would certainly trounce the current Switch. While Nintendo has the projection set at 15 million units, you do see a lot of analysts go, they should probably go higher than that. Should go for 20 million. It's like, wow, okay. I mean, look, the demand is what they're kind of judging this by, and they're looking at Nintendo to say, hey, you know what? You guys need to meet this somehow. Nintendo, President Furukawa there, has already mentioned to investors during the Q&A that they are looking to figure out how to manufacture enough of these systems, especially right out of the gate. So all of this to me lines up. The part that is funny, and I know it's getting a lot of people's attention, is the idea of a Switch 2 refresh already being mentioned. But when we did have the chip itself for the Switch 2 shown, of course, the person on YouTube was able to secure a board and looked over it. Oh yeah, there's the year 2021 pasted on the main chip itself, almost like Nintendo had been working on it for years. Go figure. So let's say there is a Switch 2 refresh 3 or 4 years from now. Yeah, they'd probably at least be doing some research on the parts that would go into it and what other features they'd like to maybe introduce. I mean, they came up with the mind-blowing idea of an Ethernet port on the dock. It's like, wow. And it sounds funny, but technically that's the first time we've seen it on a Nintendo home system, I guess. And even then, it's a dock that is connected to the main system itself. So still not technically on the main body of the device. Anyway, I don't think this is shocking for anyone to think that they might go to OLED at some point. The thing with this, though, and it's pretty clear when you look at the screen they went with, which, of course, LCD, it has a lot of other stuff packed into it with the 120 hertz refresh rate, VRR, and HDR being a big one. OLED panels, you do have to have a more premium panel in general to have the full effect of HDR because it has to reach a certain brightness, which we still need to see the LCD in person to really get a feel for how I guess good the HDR is on it, but certainly it's going to be easier to reach certain peak brightness at a more affordable price in terms of part cost than it would for OLED. So yeah, maybe years from now, Samsung is able to convince them to go with their OLED panel because it meets certain criteria. To me, the direction Nintendo needs to be working in for this system is to get it cheaper. So I do think the next thing that should be up years down the line even is a Switch 2 Lite of some kind. Sure, take some stuff out of the system. Maybe you gotta play around with the screen so it doesn't have 120 hertz refresh rate. Maybe it doesn't have VR, which is a shame because that's I think are key features for the handheld experience. But you gotta cut costs somewhere, so if you can get that thing down to $300 or $350 somewhere in there, take $100 to $150 off, I think that'd just be more appealing in general for the market as opposed to, hey, here's a $600 Switch 2 with an OLED. It's like, all right, that's cool, I guess, but I'd prefer to have one that's cheaper, especially when the gift-giving season comes around. Makes it a bit easier to secure even multiples for some other people. But yeah, we'll see how all that turns out. To me, though, the thing that's in the immediate here with this report comes down to the number of systems they can produce, so that way we can get to a position where everyone who wants one can get one. Next up, let's talk about the $80 video game and how one CEO decided to chime in when You really don't have to. Social media, for some reason, has pulled everyone into thinking they have to respond to every single thing they see. There is, I think, something lost in the art of just not saying anything at all. So let's take a look at the message here that was posted from Randy Pitchford. Now, this seemed to be in reply to someone who left a reply underneath the Borderlands for Nintendo Creative thing that they posted up, which was fine, but they said, hey, this game better not be $80, basically. And Randy Pitchford responded saying, A, not my call. B, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. Also, I love how this point is constantly made when it comes to cartridges back in the day of the 90s, just being really expensive, $70, $80, without recognizing at all everything else around it when it came to cost of living just being much lower. Have you seen the dollar menu that's posted up from the 90s at McDonald's online? It's absolutely wild. I'll let you figure out or even take a guess at how this went on social media, because Twitter X went crazy. I mean, it was absolute insanity. Now, I will say this message was posted a week ago, and it seemed like somebody picked it up, quote tweeted it, and then it was off to the races from there. A lot of articles popped up sort of sarcastically covering this because, look, if you are a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. You will overcome that $80 price tag because you really want to play this game that we produce. Now, again, Randy Pitchford, CEO over there at Gearbox, overseeing Borderlands 4, the game that he's saying, if you are a real fan of this game that I produce, basically, you will buy it. You will find a way to make it happen. So basically, if it's kind of implying if you're not a real fan, if you're not willing to spend $80 on Borderlands 4, which again, you don't have to reply to everything. Like, that is one of the worst responses I've seen on social media in a long time, because you read that and you look around and be like, yeah, that is a tone-deaf response to this whole thing. But way back in the day, we really didn't have these insights in the people's psyche or persona, because you didn't have something like a Twitter X flying around or a Facebook or anything, right? You kind of just judged everything by what was right in front of you with the game, and occasionally you get to learn about like a Cliffy B or something because he's on the front of a magazine dressed up like he's in the Matrix or something. So in this case, though, it is that quick of, I'll just type this into my phone and keep going. I am a little surprised he hasn't deleted it. He has left it up there. So at least I'll give him that. He's kind of standing on it there in the middle of social media, just getting beaten down. But this again comes back to that $80 price. It is just such a controversial thing right now. People, of course, are very driven to push back against prices going up, and I understand it. Who wants to spend more money on gaming, especially when you see the games that are at the top of the list currently for 2025 are $50 or less? Expedition 33, Split Fiction, Blueprints, they're all $50 or less than that with Blueprints, and they're all at the top of the charts when it comes to the review scores and stuff. But yeah, not a great response here. And again, you don't have to reply to everything. Sometimes it really is a better idea to just see it, read it, and just keep walking. Next up, let's talk about Doom: The Dark Ages that came out last week, and it seems like people are unsure as to how this game is really doing in terms of its sales performance, or just, I guess, generating revenue, because there are so many other avenues on how to generate revenue nowadays, since many games are tied outright to subscription services, and that's more so with any game that Microsoft releases under their umbrella of studios, which does include Bethesda, which is where Doom comes from. And in this case, with SteamDB numbers that were out there, with concurrent player counts being like the big metric now for if a game is succeeding or failing, a lot of people seem to kind of be thrown off by this one. So on SteamDB, it's like 30,000 or so people was the peak for the game. But the reason I wasn't really that interested in seeing that or covering that as much, because this is a game that is looking to drive engagement. Microsoft reinforces this every single investor's call and discussion and report. Hey, we're all about monthly active users and engagement. So I wanted to see how many players the game had because I knew that's the metric they were going to deliver, and we can see this is posted up. This is by Bethesda saying, "Thank you for making Doom the Dark Ages the biggest launch in its history. 7 times faster to 3 million players than Doom Eternal." So obviously the comparison to Doom Eternal isn't great because Doom Eternal didn't launch in the Game Pass when it released because we had Microsoft come in and complete the acquisition of Bethesda, or ZeniMax Bethesda, like a year after Doom Eternal came out. So very clearly, Doom the Dark Ages should get out there much faster to more players. So sure, you can compare it because that was the last one, but some context there with that in general. But in this case with Doom the Dark Ages, it seems, to me anyway, to be doing the job that Microsoft is setting out for a lot of these releases. It's like, keep people engaged on the platform, downloading, and I know, you could say, hey, many of those 3 million could have downloaded the game, played it for an hour, and then moved along. And that is absolutely true. But again, in Microsoft's mind, the way that they are judging a lot of the performance for these games and studios, it's how many people are interested in hitting download and even going through, in this case, 80 gigabytes plus to download, spend time doing that, and then just trying the game out. Because in their mind, they want people to consistently subscribe and stay subscribed to Game Pass. I mean, if you think about it that way, what are they at, 30 some odd million subscribers to Game Pass now? It seemed like on PC specifically, Satya Nadella shouted out like a 45% increase quarter over quarter for it. And, it makes sense with Call of Duty and some of the other stuffs in there currently. But if they do continue to grow it, they will get to a point where they look around and go like, okay, this thing is bringing in $800 million, $1 billion a month. We just need to keep feeding the beast that is a subscription service and content flowing into it constantly. And in this case, 3 million in like a week or so, 7 times faster than Doom Eternal. That is on track for what Microsoft would be looking for. So at least at this point early on, it seems to be successful for them, so much so that they wanted to make that announcement. Player count specifically isn't the be-all end-all every time. Like if you are a studio, or if you're a company like Ubisoft, you have Ubisoft Plus that you put like Assassin's Creed Shadows into, but at the looking all around, they're trying to sell the game more than that. Clearly. In this case, though, Game Pass is all over the place for Microsoft. They're trying really hard to get people to buy into that service. So the player count actually makes more sense for them than basically any other company out there. So at least for now, it seems like Doom the Dark Ages is on the right track for what Microsoft's looking for. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Fast Fusion. It's a game that's coming out from Shin'en on the Switch 2's release June 5th. And it's out for $15. And look, when the Switch came out, we had Fast RMX, which is a really fun game. It kind of played into Wipeout or F-Zero, and it seems like Fast Fusion is more of that. Just it looks better, it runs better. So in this case, we have some more details to go over, and it kind of looks to me like this is more of the tech demo for the Switch 2 release, because they do have some pretty high targets in mind here when it comes to fidelity and all the resolution numbers. So we can see this is over on Nintendo Life. I'll leave this link down below as well if you wanted to look through it in a bit more detail. But they do mention in terms of the number of tracks, they have 12 tracks at launch spread over 4 cups. So this is, as they mentioned, a drop off from what Fast RMX offered. But a lot of those tracks were taken from Fast Racing Neo that was on the Wii U. So, okay, sure. But here, anyway, when it comes to the performance modes, again, this is a $15 game, so kind of view it in that lens anyway. Performance mode, balance mode, quality mode, ultra quality, all this being in docked. Of course, depending on what you're looking for. Performance, I assume 1080p 60 means it's going to be, I guess, just closer to 60 frames or hugging it at all times, because then balance is just 1440p at 60 FPS, so maybe you'll have more fluctuations there. Quality is mixed 4K, 1080p, 60 FPS, HDR, and then the menus and HUD overlays in 4K. Ultra quality is the one that I think threw at least a couple people off, because it's 4K, 30 FPS, sure, super sharp visuals, ultra level detail, and then it says ultra quality 4K and 8K shadow maps. People saw 8K and they were like, wow, the Switch 2 can do 8K. Okay, look. In this case, it's just shadow maps. So, hey, the shadows are going to look really, really clean. Like super crisp shadows there. 8K even. Okay, great. So in that case, sure, they would use those sorts of assets, textures, whatever, and then they would just kind of downsample them to 4K. I mean, We've heard about Shin'en playing around with resolutions higher than what the output would be, and they downsampled. They did that with the Tourist, I think with the PS5 and the Xbox Series. So not too shocking here. It's just what Shin'en likes to do. Handheld mode, though, you have performance or ultra quality. Same deal there, either in this case 60 or 30, and ultra quality will just be higher level of detail, along with 8K shadow maps. So hey, either way, I'm picking this up at $15. It looks like a lot of fun. And for the price of a Fortnite Battle Pass or a skin, yeah, it seems like you get at least a good amount of time out of it there for all that involved. And at least you can see, I guess, some super clean visuals on your brand new Switch 2. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, at any point, have you spent $100 or more on a game release, special edition, a deluxe edition, etc.? Wow, it actually is 50-50 here on 13,000 votes. Wow. I remember back in the day I had picked up, and I've spent more than $100 on releases many times now with different collector's editions. The one that's always stuck out to me was back when Halo 3 came out. I'm sure some of you know where I'm going with this. You could buy like the big ultra special edition, and it had the Master Chief helmet. And you'd like pick up the helmet, and underneath of it would be just like your copies of the games in there. And people, I at one point thought that if you bought the helmet, you'd be able to put it on, but it wasn't anything like that. Although I think some hollowed it out so that you could put it on, and that was a whole thing. But that's the one that's always stuck out to me. Otherwise, though, I have picked up big box special editions. Like I got one for Fire Emblem, Bayonetta 3, and many others there. So it's not uncommon, but I think it's when we start getting closer and closer to the $100 mark for games where it really is just the game. And nowadays, you know, if the game is on the disc or even the cartridge, it's getting harder and harder to swallow that pill, right? So I think if they're going to make this kind of a push, that being the publishers, while physical copies are still around, you have to dress it up a bit. You have to do a little more than just say, hey, here's a cartridge, no manual or a disc. It might have 80 megabytes on it. You got to download the rest. At least put some effort into it for that higher price tag. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Dan, who says, I played the Marathon Alpha and the Arc Raiders Tech Test 2, which were at the same time. Arc Raiders is so far beyond Marathon in terms of gameplay quality, world building, everything really. I was interested in Marathon before the alpha, but after playing both, my money is going to Arc Raiders. So I've been seeing Arc Raiders pop up constantly in discussion and comments whenever Marathon comes up. And I said, you know what, maybe it's just a PC thing. And I look, nope, it's on consoles as well. So that immediately, I think, takes away one of the advantages that Bungie is looking to do with Marathon, is that a lot of these extraction shooters like Escape from Tarkov and some others is mostly PC-centric. Like, that's where it's really focused. Arc Raiders, though, it looks like they're spread out pretty well across multiple different platforms. So yeah, it does throw a bit of a wrench into the plans of Bungie. And now with where Marathon is, to have any kind of competition like that, that's also new around the same time that Marathon's coming out, it's going to make it even more difficult. So yeah, it might be a good idea for Bungie and Sony to reevaluate and consider maybe delaying this out into next year and just put some more work into it so it is just overwhelming in terms of the amount of content that it releases with, to give people a reason to maybe check into it a bit more, as opposed to showing up with little bit of content and then promises going forward, because you're already starting off on the wrong foot with the entire controversy right now around art theft and others. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to check out the latest episode of the Spawncast, I'll leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.